Duncan Hames.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I'd like to join colleagues in commending the Honourable Member for Windsor for this debate and for the tone in which he set it, which I think has surprisingly perhaps reflected well on this House. As a new member, I've persevered in seeking to catch your eye this afternoon, partly because although I very much agree with a lot of the critiques that have been made of our current situation as outlined by colleagues, I do not find myself sharing the outlook of many colleagues as to where the solution lies. And that was not more acute than in the case of the Honourable Member for Gainsborough, to whom I'm following. But let me preface my remarks by acknowledging as a new member that my experience to date in this place is of a great number of hard-working, dedicated colleagues on both sides of this House. And in terms of their work ethic, I'm in no doubt that members of this House approach their role as that of a public servant. However, when it comes to terms and conditions, mode of operation, even the autonomy with which they decide how to provide that service to the public, as a new member, I have been surprised by the number of colleagues who instead adopt a mindset of someone running their own business. In fact, today we have heard contradictory accounts in the debate about who employs who in this place. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I've run a small business, but as a newly elected member, I could really have done without the freedom and responsibility of choosing my own constituency premises, negotiating the lease, and sourcing the necessary equipment for my staff to use. None of that is what I came here to do, and I expect that in some cases it will not be something other members here even feel qualified to do. If one is to have all of this administrative freedom to set things up exactly as one wishes, then with it comes administrative responsibility. With that freedom also comes the unusual transaction requirements whereby MPs pay for all these things first, then come to redeem them as what we've come to refer to as expenses. I would argue that members need to realise that in cherishing that administrative autonomy, they make a rod for their own backs in turning what to most people are the fundamentals of their workplace accommodation into what for us become treated as expenses. To be clear, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I would rather that we let go of all this and allow independent or indeed parliamentary authorities to provide, manage and pay for our constituency office facilities.
No.
Mr. Speaker, I accept that that's not the shared view of other members of this House, but I've patiently waited to share my view, which I hope members will at least respect. In the information published today, there are no expenses reported in my name. That's not because I've shouldered all of these costs myself, though my team and I have taken care to limit the costs met by the taxpayer, but because I put off using the expenses system as long as I possibly could, whilst other colleagues experienced what I understand have been called teething troubles. My staff tell me that in those early days it was difficult to get either timely or consistent advice from IPSA personnel. But the administration of these arrangements is now better than it was. I'm sure as the public start to use the information that IPSA publish, the need for improved transparency will be apparent. And I agree with the member opposite who argued that it would be helpful that we had some clear headings such as constituency surgeries rather than the current description of hire of premises. And I would echo the comments of the member for Windsor in his conclusion that IPSA is mistaken in deciding not to publish receipts. A similar argument, Mr. Speaker, is applicable to arrangements for MPs' staff. Many of them are modestly paid, hard-working and share all the job insecurity that we as elected representatives have come to accept. The budget for their employment, as was explained earlier, has effectively been cut by 10% since May. And unlike other public servants, they have no recourse to a professional human resources department and are instead at the mercy of the people management skills of individual legislators. Now that IPSA have deemed it appropriate that they should set their job descriptions and pay scales, I believe it should also accept the support responsibilities arising from their emerging de facto relationship as their employer. I believe MP staff deserve to be treated as people, as workers, and not reduced to an expense. Mr. Speaker, I recognise the need for these arrangements, as members on all sides of this argument have accepted to be governed independently of MPs. And I look to IPSA to continue to develop a fairer and more cost-effective system. We do seem to be agreed about the shortcomings of the situation we have, but I do not believe the answer is for allowances which offer greater freedom for members of Parliament, or indeed for members of Parliament to threaten to bring that about. But as I believe I've set out, there is an alternative way forward, one whereby members, as the member of Windsor asked, should have more time to spend on their constituents. It is for basic office accommodation, equipment and HR administration to be provided directly, and for members of Parliament to let go and get out of the way.